Look at the person sitting next to you right now. It might be your partner, your spouse, or your best friend. They look exactly the same as they did yesterday. Their voice has that same familiar warmth. They remember your favourite meal, and they still laugh at the same old jokes. But then a cold shiver runs down your spine. A crazy, irrational question takes root in the back of your mind. What if that isn't them? What if the light behind those eyes has gone out, and the thing sitting there is just a hollow shell, a perfect copy pretending to be the person you love? Welcome back to the Monsters Id. I am Dr. Aris Thorne. We often fear monsters with claws and fangs, creatures that hunt us in the dark. But today we are going to dissect a fear far more subtle and far more cruel. It is the terror of the familiar becoming strange. It is the fear that we are being replaced. Today we are analysing the psychology of the Body Snatchers. In 1955, Jack Finney wrote the novel The Body Snatchers. Since then, this story has been adapted for the screen 4 separate times. Why does this concept haunt us so deeply? The plot is always the same. An alien species arrives on Earth. They don't use guns or bombs. They simply wait until you sleep. And when you wake up, you have been replaced by a pod person, a perfect biological copy. You have the old memories, the old skills, but you have no emotions. You are part of the hive. Many critics argue that the film is a metaphor for the Red, scare of the Cold War, or perhaps the fear of losing individuality to modern consumerism. While those interpretations are valid, they are merely the surface. On a deeper psychological level, this is not a movie about aliens. It is a clinical study of paranoia and identity crisis. It forces us to ask, when everyone is exactly the same, does the self even matter? To truly understand this fear, we must look at the human mind. There is a real psychiatric disorder called the Capgras Delusion. Patients suffering from this condition are perfectly lucid. They can recognise faces and recall memories, but they are absolutely convinced that their loved ones have been replaced by identical imposters. Why? Because the emotional connection in the brain has been severed. They see the mother, but they don't feel the maternal bond. Invasion of the Body Snatchers is essentially the realisation of this Capgras nightmare on a global scale. It validates the terrifying thought that you are the only one who sees the truth. Beyond paranoia, we face the concept of de-individuation. Humans are social creatures. We crave belonging. But we also crave uniqueness. The pod people represent a twisted form of utopia. In their world, there is no war, no hate, and no pain. Everyone is united. But the price for this peace is the death of the individual. The fear here isn't physical death. It is ego death. You still live, but you are no longer there. Finally, we encounter what Sigmund Freud called the screen chapter uncanny, something that is simultaneously familiar and yet terribly strange. That is the essence of the horror here. When we look at the famous ending of the 1978 film, where the protagonist points and screams, that isn't just a monster's roar, it is a siren. It is a signal to the hive that says, I have found the outlier. The ultimate fear isn't being eaten, it is being exposed as the only human left in a crowd of the emotionless. So why do we watch this? Why do we entertain the fear of replacement? Because Invasion of the Body Snatchers inadvertently reminds us of the value of being human. To be human is to suffer. We endure loss, betrayal, loneliness, and emotional chaos. The pod people promise a life without that pain, a peaceful, eternal sleep. But the film offers us a catharsis. It tells us that suffering is the proof of our existence. Emotion, even when it is negative, is what distinguishes us from hollow shells. We would rather live in a chaotic, painful, but authentic world than sink into the peaceful sleep of apathy. Next time you feel grief, anger, or fear, cherish it. Because at the very least, it proves that you haven't been replaced. You are not asleep.